the revolutionary ankle lock system, an integrated brace built into the boots, delivering unrivaled support, protecting ligaments from twists, tears, and trauma.
Matt Lenihan for Boxing Social in association with Empire Fight Store, Our King's Competitions. Dan Rafael, always a pleasure to have you on. You're you're a regular on the channel now, which you have been for some time, well over a couple of years, and really appreciate it from across the pond. News today that broke. So I was hearing a lot of the Ben Eubank fight. I was hearing an awful lot saying, look, MVP are in town Monday. This will get announced soon, December 19th. And I'm like, all right, we'll see. We've heard a lot before. Let's just see if it actually gets done. We've still got to see them in the ring, but posters been put everywhere. Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua, a professional heavyweight bout, 10-ounce gloves, 8 rounds, and AJ can't weigh more than 200 and is it 45 or 54?
Well, they didn't make an announcement of that, but
ring. I think it went on the ring that. I think.
But even if I think I heard it was 245.
That's the one. Yeah.
Even if that's the case, it's irrelevant. It's the same as when they made the Jake Paul exhibition against Gervonta Davis, and the cap weight was 195 for a guy that's fought in that same ballpark within a few pounds his entire career, except for the Mike Tyson fight. Mm-hmm. So to tell AJ that he has to weigh 245, he's going to cut literally about 4 or 5 pounds from where he's been for most of his recent fights. And by the way, he's fought plenty of fights under 245. So I don't even view that as a stipulation. It's just nonsense.
When somebody said that, I was like, holy shit, they're going to make this guy faster. We should tell him, put all the weight on, let their muscles get big.
Look, if somebody said to me, he'll just be in a little better shape.
He's going to be well up for this fight. In all honesty, look, I've seen a lot of thoughts and opinions on it. And I feel like I'm sort of torn because I think if you have the opinion that Jake Paul's, he's not fighting boxers, he's not done this, not done that, it's almost from one extreme to the other because there's never really that middle ground. You see the Tommy Fury thing, you go, that is kind of like a reasonable thing. And he got lost to Tommy Fury overall. I know a lot of people thought maybe not, but he's not gone from that to then, he's an elite level heavyweight, former, he's a former 2-time world champion. He can still, mix it in with anyone on his day, Joshua. This is not just a leap. This is a Hail Mary in my eyes. Dan, how do you see it?
I mean, I'll tell you one thing. Whatever you think of this, I don't love it. But I get it. I understand the business elements. But in terms of just the matchup, if you said to me, you can either see Jake Paul fight Anthony Joshua in an official fight, or you can watch him fight an exhibition match against Tank Davis, I would take him against Anthony Joshua all day long. To me, this is a million times better than what I always have thought was a very ill-conceived event with Tank Davis. So whatever you think about Jake and some of the types of fights that he has made, you got to give him credit for at least everybody has said for a long time now, fight a real fighter, fight a real boxer. Well, Anthony Joshua was absolutely a real boxer, a real fighter. You can't deny that. Like you said, 2-time world champion, Olympic gold medalist. Now, he may not be at what he was when he was absolute peak. There's no doubt that Anthony Joshua was beyond his apex of his career. Mm-hmm. But even though he'll be coming off of about a 14-month layoff.
Yeah.
He's coming off having had surgery on his elbow. He's coming off of a very, very, very difficult, brutal, hard knockout loss in the Dubois fight. But all that said, I still think he's got enough to compete with any heavyweight in the world, much less a fighter like Jake Paul, who is still, in the view of many and most and myself and probably you and any number of people, still essentially a novice who has done a good job in navigating a difficult business and making a lot of money in what are big events, but not really putting himself too much at risk. Anybody that really understands boxing, I had to understand that the Tyson fight was no risk, and that the Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fight, which was his most recent fight, was extraordinarily limited risk. Those are the 2 fights he's had in his most recent 2 fights. Those are so-called real fighters, but not for a long, long time. Chavez is a decade or so past when he was best. And Tyson had been retired 19 years and hadn't been, even when he was still an active fighter, hadn't been at his best over the last like decade of his career. So they were guys with big names, but not threats. And the other fighters that he's faced have been a collection of either non-combat athletes, MMA fighters who've decided to come into boxing or had very limited experience in boxing. And then, a couple of guys in boxing that didn't have a lot of experience who were boxers, but had been off, for a long time. A couple of guys you never heard of before he fought those guys, and those guys you'll never hear of again. Of course, the fight against Tommy Fury, which I know he lost, but it was like a split decision, as my recollection says, and it was awfully close. And for my perspective is, whatever you think about it, Jake Paul certainly has gotten better since he fought Tommy Fury. He's certainly gotten better over the last number of fights. Now, is he at an elite world-class level? Probably not yet. He may never get to that level, but so you got to give him props. He's taken on a guy that I spend part of my morning talking to different boxing matchmakers, people I've known for decades in this business, who have vast experience of building fighters and moving fighters and developing them, and they know a lot better than you or me what they're looking at. And to a person, they were like, they don't understand why Jake took this fight, because they think it's, one person used the word of decapitation. So he's going to be a monstrous underdog against a massive puncher. But they're all getting paid, and we'll all watch.
Yeah, I suppose I think you definitely, obviously, you've been around the game for so many years and you've seen everything. We're moving into this era now where we look at fights and you go, it's good business. Whether you like it or not, sometimes you go, well, I get why he's taking that. It's a bag of money for less risk, etc. We see the chess moves before they move to other fights, and we see that. Now, I go online and I'm like, I wonder what the response is. I get what half of it's going to be, and I see seasoned journalists, ex-fighters going, this affects AJ's legacy, this affects this. And I'm like, well, his legacy is already an Olympic champion. He's already a two-time world champion. He's had his moments. There's only really one fight now in the world anyone really is asking Anthony Joshua to have. And by all accounts, that will happen, touch wood, according to Turkey Al Sheikh, and whether Tyson decides I'm game for another one, September. So what really left does he have to do? Does from your end, when you look at it, obviously, I know you're quite objective with it, so do you see this as anything other than a good business move? Does it tarnish his legacy at all? How do you see it?
I don't see anything tarnishing his legacy at this point, because it's established. As you said, he is no longer the prime Anthony Joshua. And so what he does at this point forward, I mean, it won't have very much impact. And, he can increase his legacy, I suppose, if he were to say, become champion again or something along those lines. But if you were going to get paid a certain amount of money for a lesser kind of fight, and you can make a ton more for another fight that you're a heavy favorite in, that you're going to make way multiples of what you could earn in that fight, why wouldn't you take the easy work? So my sources tell me that, yes, this fight between Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul was announced on Monday. Obviously, they didn't announce it on the day that it was finalized. Maybe they finally put the final signatures to the paper, but this has been in the works for a little while. Eddie Hearn talked about it a couple weeks ago on his DAZN show. It's been reported by myself and others over the last, since like probably mid-November, that this was in the offing ever since Tank was dropped from the fight. Tank was dropped from that fight like November 3rd or November 4th. And as soon as that happened, MVP, in their announcement of the fight with Tank being canceled, that they said that Jake would fight on a different date before the end of 2025 in another Netflix event. They went to work. And it's been widely reported, and I've confirmed this, and we've seen videos from like Francis Ngannou himself talking about the offer. So there was a lot of people that they were talking to, and AJ was one of them. They've been talking about doing AJ in 2026, even before all this situation came about doing it after the Tank fight. So the fact they went back to that does not surprise me. AJ has been in the gym. He's coming back, has rehabbed the elbow. And again, what I was going to tell you about why he could do this and probably has been training in at least a somewhat serious manner, is that they were getting ready on a really like low-key basis, real quietly this week or in the last few days, going to add him to Saturday's Riyadh card, the Ring Magazine card, as just another, as a fight. They obviously have their 4 championship fights, and it's a great card. And they were going to, basically stick him in on also. Remember, originally Arthur Beterbiev was going to be on that card in like a lesser fight. They were going to add Anthony Joshua in a similar situation. He was going to fight Cassius Chaney a journeyman-ish kind of fighter who has, never really reached the top level, but he's mixed in with a couple of solid guys, but he's got some losses. Not probably viewed by anybody as a real threat. But once they got the ball rolling to make this match with Jake in a serious manner, once the Tank fight was off, they put the brakes and they canceled that Cassius Chaney plan, and they went and they finished up the paperwork.
It's quite funny because I was in Orlando with Eddie when the fight for Tank got cancelled, and he was almost like, not confused, but he said, Anthony Joshua will be back before the end of the year. And at the time when he's telling me that, and we did the Matchroom 5K thing in the morning, we were speaking, and I said, look, how realistic when you're saying he's out is the Jake Paul fight? As soon as the interview ends, he gets a phone call from certain people. And obviously, I didn't hear the call, I walked off, but I was like, holy shit, this might actually happen. And then we heard rumblings he might end up on the Stockton card. He might end up on that. I'm thinking, you're going to put Anthony Joshua in Stockton? Like, just fair. He goes, doesn't matter where he fights, we'll put him wherever. And I was like, all right. And then
they were making plans for the Riyadh card, and then, but again, he was going to do the Riyadh card as just a tune-up, shake off the rust from the layoff, all those, over a year, test out the elbow, make sure things are good, try to get that confidence back after taking the knockout. But I dare say Cassius Chaney is a guy that probably would be given a great chance to beat Jake Paul. So if he was going to make, I don't know the numbers, say he was going to make $1 million to fight against Cassius Chaney just to get back in the groove, or you can make, $35 million to fight Anthony, or for Anthony to fight Jake Paul for a similar type of fight, or even a lesser type of fight. Why in the world wouldn't you do that? It's become a big event. Now, Joshua does have a lot at stake from the standpoint that if you listen to the comments that Turkey made during the interview he did with Eddie standing by his side there on DAZN during the undercard of the, between fights when Conor Benn and Eubank Jr. had the rematch on Saturday, he was talking about a fight in Saudi Arabia for Joshua in February, followed by what he said, one of the biggest fights or greatest fights in the history of boxing. We all know he meant the Fury fight in September in London. And so if a February fight for a lot of money in Riyadh is at stake, as well as a fight against Tyson Fury next September, then he does have to make sure he comes through this fight. I mean, obviously he's going to be a massive underdog, Jake Paul, but if he pulls off the upset, there goes the Joshua plans for 2026, I would think. So, he's going to be a humongous favorite, but tune-up fights have a strange way of doing weird shit sometimes. I always use the Tommy Morrison example against Lennox Lewis. So what happened there?
Yeah, but
got knocked out in the first round by a nobody.
Listen, if I'm not even saying it, but this,
I'm going to say it for you. Okay?
Don't. No, please.
If Jake Paul beats Anthony Joshua by a knockout, it's a bigger upset than when Buster Douglas beat.
No shit.
For real.
No, it is. There is. I can't even bring myself to say the sentence because, and this is not even a disrespect to him. It's the respect I've got for what Anthony Joshua has done. Jake Paul is great for boxing. He brings eyes to the sport. He's elevated the women's game. He's done okay himself. He's took it seriously. No problem. But to think even, like, I had someone send me a message of that earlier. And I just said, I'm going to stop you right there. Do not bring that conversation because, and I said the same when people said Conor McGregor would beat Floyd Mayweather. But that, in the realms of this, is more like, that was more like, I don't even know if it was, but you're like, how are we saying these words?
The only reason why you might even have a glimmer of thought that maybe Jake Paul could somehow beat Joshua. And like I said, I talked to these matchmakers who've been in charge of building careers of fighters and making these fights for a long time, who know this stuff a lot better than I do. And they're all like, no way, he's got no shot. He obviously got a ton of money from Netflix to do the fight. And maybe they feel like Jake has the type of personality and the type of fan following and the loyalty from fans that if he takes a loss or even a knockout loss to a fighter of the caliber of Anthony Joshua, they're not going to hold that against him. It'll be forgiven. They'll be like, look, he gave it a big effort against a guy that was a heavy duty favorite, and maybe it didn't work out. So we're not going to hate on him for that. But the thing is, when Buster knocks out Tyson, like Buster Douglas is like a real heavyweight. It's not like he wasn't maybe the most accomplished, and maybe he had people accuse him of quitting in a previous fight, but he came in great shape against a less than prepared Tyson, and he whipped his ass. So there's that aspect of things. And the only thing, like I was saying, if you're going to give Jake a glimmer of a chance, is you could look to the thing about Joshua, long layoff, coming off the injury, and it wasn't just a loss. You know, guys lose all the time. I mean, that's part of the sport.
No,
it was such an overwhelmingly devastating loss that it was really, really bad.
It was. I think one of the flip sides to this, in all seriousness, so one of the other messages I got was, and we get the game, so it's like you understand there's an element of danger in every fight. Not more so in the weekend when everyone's talking about rehydration, weight, and all this stuff, which goes round and round and round. I've never had as many people go, he can really get hurt in this fight if these are 10-ounce gloves. And I look at the fight and, you know, there's not many times I look at a matchup and go, Jesus. Like, if Anthony Joshua is any sort of percentage of the fighter he was, and I think we'll know when we get in there.
50%. Matt, at 50%.
I'm going to give him less than that, any percent. If he hits him with a left and right, like he hit Ngannou with, and Ngannou's accustomed to getting hit with 4-ounce gloves on, combat athlete, naturally, and look, Jake's a fighter now, but we're talking Ngannou. I go, this could be bad, and you don't want this event to be one of them moments where you go, shit.
But that's what this is. This is not. Yes, it's an official fight, but this is like when you ride past a wreck on the highway and you look out your window. You're rubbernecking, and people are looking at this to be like a train wreck. I don't mean that like it's not going to be a real fight. I'm just saying that the odds are so stacked against Joshua. I mean against Paul rather to be the winner that people are going to tune in just to see like how badly he destroys him.
Yeah,
I mean that's the way I see it. And again, I don't wish that on Jake Paul. I'm just saying that's going to be the perception from a lot of people who are going to consume this event. I mean, he is. I'm still trying to understand how you go from you're 6'1", 200 pounds, and you're taking on the 5'5", 135-pound Tank Davis in an exhibition fight. And when that doesn't work out, you're like, fuck it. And it's like the entire 180. You're like, let me take on the former 2-time heavyweight champion, Olympic gold medalist, 6'6", 200, we'll say 245 pounds, who's not that far removed from being like literally one of the top 3 heavyweights in boxing.
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing that's also crazy about it is when they were going through the process of figuring out what event to try to get done for Jake for the end of this year, once the Tank fight fell out, they're mentioning they're all over the weight scale. They're all over the place. It's Joshua, heavyweight, Ryan Garcia, a welterweight, Andre Ward, a retired super middleweight light heavyweight, Nate Diaz, a guy you already beat who was a former UFC fighter, Ngannou, a big monster heavyweight from MMA and also with a couple of pro heavyweight fights, including a fight where a lot of people thought he beat Tyson Fury, and the fight where Joshua basically knocked him out cold. So how do you come up with, it's like they don't even care what the divisions are.
I have to say, and we'll conclude this topic on this. I think we have to say hands up and go, fair enough. You get all the respect in the world, just for fighting anyway, but for making this jump, nobody can say to him anything after this. If this goes through, no matter if you listen, and I mean this in all sincerity, if he makes this out of the first round, whatever, fair play. And I mean that
listen,
genuinely, that's
I don't want to hear anything from Anthony Joshua after the fight. Whatever happens is that, if it goes 6, 7, 8 rounds, whatever, that is unacceptable, honestly. Your job, if you are who you say you are, and you still have designs on big fights and fighting Tyson Fury, and in the comments in the official announcement from Eddie Hearn about his desire to once again be a heavyweight champion, you better go in there and step on the fucking gas from the opening bell and get rid of this dude who, to many people, is still an interloper in boxing and doesn't really belong. That's not me saying that. That's just what I hear from a lot of people that look down on Jake. You got to go there and get rid of this dude the same way you did with Ngannou.
Absolutely. Just quickly before we wrap this up, we have a new WBO Heavyweight World Champion. Let's give him his props in Fabio Wardley. Look, he's coming off the back of beating Joseph Parker, Justice Une, David Adelaide, etc., etc. We know he's not beaten Usyk. No fault of his own, by the way, as well. And we had a little chat off camera on how it almost robs him of that moment, and it robs the fans of seeing him fight the actual champion. But I suppose it's the time we're in. And look, he's from the background he's come from and the people he's beat. Joseph Parker was a former world champion. You know, if Usyk did retire and belts become fragment, you wouldn't begrudge maybe that being for a title. So I kind of look at it and go, you know what, well done, Fabio, for the journey you've been on.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had a more definitive reason as to why Usyk elected to give up the WBO title. He's not, to my knowledge, not made any comments about the reasons why. I asked the WBO; they said they were not sure why he did, but they said, he sent a letter and like they normally do to let them know that was happening. And as you said, if he vacated the title and the next fight to fill that title was made between Joseph Parker, pre-positive cocaine test, and Fabio Wardley, no one would have ever said a word that was like not a legit fight to fight for a vacant belt. So the fact that they fought for what was the interim title a few weeks ago, and of course Wardley got the victory, whatever you thought about the stoppage, he won the fight, and it robs him of the chance to be announced in the ring in front of his friends, his family, himself, the world, and the new WBO heavyweight champion. So he got the interim belt, but now he's going to get an email or a text message or a phone call from one of his team people, his manager, his promoter, or whatever, telling him that he's now been elevated to being WBO champion. Now that's still a good accomplishment to become a heavyweight champion, but and it's not like he didn't get a win to put himself in that position, because he did have the win against Parker. But this is not just about the scenario that I'm talking about with Fabio Wardley. This is happening time and time again in boxing for all organizations where they've got interim champions and the guy doesn't get the title fight. He's ordered to have the title fight. Maybe that other champion, retires or gives up the belt or goes to another weight class or whatever, and the guy suddenly becomes the champion. I mean, we've seen it happen 1,000 times. It's happened with, Brian Norman, who was going to fight this weekend. He was the interim champion. He got elevated when a title got vacated. I mean, it happens all the time. It happened, any number of times.
Absolutely. Final one then. How much looking forward to the fights this weekend? Brian Norman, who you just mentioned there, we've got Regan for us in Saudi Arabia, has interviewed him today. He's in fine form, full of confidence. That fight with Devin Haney for me is so interesting. When you talk about the power, and I know when we look at the list of opponents Brian Norman's been in, doesn't maybe compare to a Devin Haney, but you go, when people are questioning Devin and questioning his durability, that hesitancy to get into that danger zone, he's in that ring with the wrong guy to do that. But that's what makes this exciting. And he said, no, we can fight. And then you've Benavidez, Anthony Yard on the card. You've Abdullah Mason and Sam Noakes, two young guns. Bam Rodriguez, pound for pound, etc. I know I'm missing another one out there, which is probably blatantly obvious. But I'm sure
you got the main. There's four main fights. The main event is Benavidez against Yard for Benavidez light heavyweight title. Bam Rodriguez and Martinez is a 3-belt unification. Fantastic fight. Probably my favorite fight on the card. You already mentioned Haney and Norman. They're fighting for Brian Norman's welterweight title. Really good matchup. And then the other fight that we discussed that you mentioned also, Sam Noakes against Abdullah Mason for the vacant WBO lightweight title. Terrific fight. And every single one of those fights is a fight where, in the Benavidez Anthony Yard fight, no offense to Yard, I feel like Benavidez is a huge favorite and should be, and probably wins. The other three fights could probably go any which way, it seems to me.
Yeah, that's the thing. Even in the main event, where we say Benavidez is the overwhelming favourite, I still, with Anthony Yard, remember the moments he's had in these big fights where he didn't shy away from Beterbiev, who at the times pre-Bivol was fucking bang, 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 and stands with him and goes, no, we can go. That's fine. Eventually gets caught out, but he went out there and gave everything. I think he had something like 9 amateur fights. Not obviously seen as like some of the Olympians coming through, takes on Kovalev, although it was back end of his career. It's still a very distinguished Kovalev who knows his way around the ring, almost has him out of there. And now he gets a chance against, let's be honest, a guy who is in his prime, and he's probably going to be in his prime for a few more years. So it's still one of them where you go, if you can have them moments.
Yeah, no, listen, it could. You just don't know. And also with the Bam fight, I mean, he should be the favorite, obviously. But if you watch the Martinez fights against Ioka, for example, that dude was the first fight with Ioka was spectacular. He can really fight, also. I mean, so even though there's favorites, it's not like it's 80-20, right? If you're making Bam a favorite, maybe it's like 60-40. Benavidez might be a little bit wider. Haney, Norman, probably, I don't know if I'd say 50-50. I think that probably Norman, given his recent track record and his more natural division, is probably also like 60-ish, 40-ish, maybe 55-45. But they're not wide odds on any of these fights, it doesn't seem to me.
No, I think
I'm looking forward to it. And you know what? The best part of it doesn't conflict with any other major show that day. And it's for us here in America. I can watch it in the afternoon, get a good night's sleep. I'm good to go. I'm ready.
Yeah, I'll be up 4 a.m. 4 a.m. But anyway.
That's the other thing about it. The main event in Saudi Arabia is going to be at about 4 o'clock in the morning because they're kind of like when they did for a lot of the Riyadh fights are geared towards the British time zone, which is not that much different from Riyadh, but they still, because when it's been Tyson Fury or it's been Joshua, they've geared it towards that timing. When they did the Canelo fight against Skull, it was geared towards having the main event that was good for the American and the Mexican audience in our time zones. Yeah. And for this one, because most of the fights are American fighters, they're doing it geared towards the American time zone. So that main event will be on for us at a much more reasonable hour, but it's going to be literally 4 o'clock in the morning or so for the approximate start of the main event.
Yep. But genuinely, as an actual fan of the sport, I have an interest in every fight, so it's nice. It's going to be a good watch. Dan, as always, appreciate you jumping on. And as always, even if you haven't made it to the end of this interview, in the description, you'll see it, Dan Substack, where you can read the full breakdown, the full news breakdown of Anthony Joshua, Jake Paul, or actually the other way around, because Joshua's the big side in this fight. Wow, can't believe I'm saying that. Fuck me. And then you can read the article and you can find out about him. Potentially was supposed to fight in Riyadh this weekend, which would have really made me angry that I didn't choose to go on that trip. So, anyway, Dan, always a pleasure, and we will catch up soon, I'm sure.
Okay, Matt, you brought it. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
The revolutionary ankle lock system, an integrated brace built into the boots, delivering unrivaled support, protecting ligaments from twists, tears, and trauma.